Welcome to People in Insurance. This podcast explores the mix of diversity, culture and tech innovations in our industry. Join us as we sit down with trailblazers, thought leaders and innovators who are reshaping the landscape of insurance, bringing you stories that redefine the narrative. We are your guide to the evolving landscape of insurance. This is People in Insurance, brought to you by Mackay.
Welcome to People in Insurance, Changing the Conversation. My name's Sharon Brown and I'm here with Richard Dudley, Chair of the IUAD Board, Insurance United Against Dementia, and Chris Park from the Alzheimer Society. We're going to talk about dementia and the incredible work that IUAD is doing with the Alzheimer Society. So I'm going to start off with you, Chris, and just ask you a few questions about dementia. And really, to set the scene, what is dementia?
Thanks, Sharon, and thanks for having me on the podcast today as well. So, dementia is caused when diseases physically damage the brain, like other diseases, kidney disease or liver disease or lung disease. It's just the brain being damaged. Dementia is actually an umbrella term for the symptoms that occur when the brain and parts of the brain have been damaged and destroyed in some way. So the most common cause of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. Dementia is the symptoms that Alzheimer's disease causes. And Alzheimer's Society, we're here to provide help and hope to people that are affected by dementia, whatever the cause might be. There's actually over 100 different types of dementia and a number of symptoms that people will experience as a result of dementia. A lot of people might experience memory loss, but that's not the only symptom. It might be changes in behavior, it might be challenges with communication or issues with motor skills as well. So it's not just about that change in memory.
Okay. I mean, it's incredible because a lot of us, unless you've been directly affected by the disease, really don't come across it all the time. So it's kind of, when somebody starts showing symptoms, I guess, it's recognising those symptoms and understanding how important it is for early diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
And those sort of symptoms, it might be someone acting a bit more confused. They might be acting a little bit out of character. Someone who might normally be quite shy or retiring, being perhaps a little bit more aggressive or a bit more agitated. It might be something around memory, asking the same question multiple times. That can be an early kind of sign as well. Anything in a way that really is sort of that cognitive or social change in person can be those early signs and symptoms. And the most important thing, as you say, is to act on anything. If you are concerned about your own memory or actions, try and see a GP or try and get some advice. Or if you're concerned about that in a loved one, the same process really. And that can often be challenging, obviously, for relationships as well. We certainly know that and see that, and you've personally sort of seen that as well. But on the Alzheimer's Society website, we have a really helpful tool that's been created by the Royal College of General Practitioners as well, and that's a symptoms checker. And people can kind of go on there and go through a comprehensive set of questions to look at whether they're showing some more signs that they should be concerned about. And then you can also take it to the GP as well. Can be really helpful in terms of that conversation and really giving them some evidence to say, well, I've gone through this. It's approved by these people. It's on the Alzheimer's Society website. Can we investigate it further, please?
Mm-hmm. Why is it so important to get dementia diagnosed early?
Well, I think like anything in any cause of disease, if we can diagnose it early and as early as possible, we can help people more. People can get, with the right care and support and understanding, people living with dementia can still play an active role in their community. You'd be active in their life. They might still be able to carry on working, have very fulfilling relationships, you carry on driving or living independently for as long as possible. Understanding that they might have a form of dementia means the right care and support can be made available to them, and they can also get some treatments that might help with some of the symptoms. And in future, as we're kind of seeing some progress in research, people will be able to access these treatments that will slow down forms of dementia, or certainly Alzheimer's disease at the moment, and get more years better quality of life. So it's just having that understanding and being able to have that person-centered sort of care and support. If you don't have a diagnosis, you don't really know what you're dealing with. And yes, dementia can still be really challenging, and sometimes people avoid getting the diagnosis for that reason, or they're worried about something that might be taken away from them. But to help keep people safe and get the help that they might need, that diagnosis is crucial.
Thank you, Chris. So Richard, you've been involved in the movement, the Insurance United Against Dementia campaign for a number of years. Can you just tell us a bit more about your involvement and what the campaign is and how it helps the insurance industry and the Alzheimer's Society?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, thank you, Sharon. So Insurance United Against Dementia was started, I think, back at the beginning of 2017, and it was actually the brainchild of a guy called Chris Wallace, who at the moment is the CEO of UK and Ireland, I think, for QBE. And he was personally impacted by the disease. He had a feeling he wanted to do something about it. He had a notion that the insurance industry, there was a lot of things about insurance that would make it a good partner to work together with the charity sector. And he partnered with the Alzheimer's Society, and between them they came up with this amazing idea called Insurance United Against Dementia. And him and probably two other guys were the real core of the beginning of this across the industry. The two others were a guy called Paul Jack from Lockton, the broking house, and Benedict Burke, who was a luminary at Crawford's in the loss adjusting side. And their concept was that we could lean upon the willingness to collaborate, the teamy nature, if you like, of our marketplace, and use that to really leverage the reach of the industry, both in terms of raising funds, but also raising awareness to support the enormous challenge that is dementia, and specifically through the Alzheimer's Society. And he asked me to get involved not long after they started. I think it was probably in the middle of 2017. And the reason why I got involved was not necessarily that I have a huge personal history in the family, although since I've got involved, that has actually appeared in the family, my wife's mother in particular. But the more I researched the topic, the more angry it made me, because this is the biggest killer in the UK. In fact, it's probably the biggest killer in the world. 1 in 3 people who are born today are going to develop these diseases of one form of dementia or another. And the amount of money and attention that is placed on trying to solve that challenge is ridiculously small when you compare it to some of the other bigger killers we see in the health sphere, like cancer and heart disease. Those causes deserve all the support that they get, but this one wasn't getting anywhere near enough. And for me, I felt that was deeply unfair and deeply wrong. So that's the reason why I got involved in the campaign.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The insurance industry alone has raised a phenomenal amount of money. And the last time that we were together was in the Pyrenees, trekking across the Pyrenees in order to raise, I think, about 138,000, was it, Chris, in the end, with the gift aid? I think that's where we got to.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an absolutely phenomenal experience. But there have been so many events over those years that, you know, there's been the desert walks, there's been so many people getting involved. Lockton just recently have done a great fundraiser, and so many of the guys within the industry have put together some fantastic events. Are we able just to talk about some of those events and just and see how that money has been raised? Because, you know, the collaborative nature of the industry has enabled £10 million nearly to raise in a very short period of time. So, you know, it's kind of shout out to all of the guys out there that have done some phenomenal things. We probably won't get through all of them, but I think, you know, Chris and Richard, you're quite close to this, aren't you?
The way I would start there, Sharon, is that The campaign is about a number of different things. It's about raising money. We'll get onto that in your specific question in a second. It's about raising awareness of dementia through the industry, and making sure that lots more people across the industry understand more about dementia, who they can turn to, including Alzheimer's Society for support, and how they can take steps to better protect their colleagues and their families. So it's about a lot of different things. And we try and use some of the ways we raise money to try and support all of those aims, not just the financial ones. But on the financial side, we really have a few key legs to the stool, if you like, of how we go about raising money through the campaign. So there are individual donors. So we have some very generous individual donors across the industry who've made very material donations across since 2017. We have obviously corporate relationships, and those are either done through very specific corporate charity partnerships, which of course many firms now do, or they're made in the form of one-off donations. And then we have the other big one is really events. So to your specific question, we try and do have done a number of events across the period since 2017. And those could be anything from the one you just mentioned, which is a walk across the Pyrenees, and in fact 2 previous walks before that, one in the Alps and one in the deserts in Africa. And that's where we bring together a group of people from across the industry. All of them raise money for the cause. It's a great collaborative event, back to our earlier point about why the industry collaboration is so powerful for Alzheimer's Society. And then we have things like Insurance Day for Dementia, which I think we'll probably get onto specifically later in the chat. And then we've also, along the way, we've had evenings, we've had drinks evenings, we've had one gala dinner, which I forget what year we did that, Chris, probably 2 or 3 years ago now. And we're planning another one towards the end of the first stage of the campaign in March next year, 2025. So there are individuals, there are corporations, there are events, and there are specific days where we try and ask the industry for support. Chris, would you add to that?
You've done an excellent job of covering most of it there, Richard. I'd just, as you say, we just add a little bit further to it. We're just hugely grateful in the different ways that the insurance industry and the IUAD board members have sort of thought about this in a really kind of commercial way to raise a significant amount of money and do exactly what the campaign title says: unite the industry. Like these different events that are either being led, like you said, Sharon, by Lockton, for instance, with their Lockton Steps Up challenge that recently happened. That was bringing together lots of their market partners as well. So it was really, as Richard said, kind of collaborative as well, and a great occasion. They lucked out with the weather as well. It was, mostly, I think there was a bit of rain at the start, but it was a lovely day for them. And that event alone raised over £200,000 for Alzheimer's Society and under the IUAD campaign umbrella. But there's lots of different pockets of activity and events and other kind of ways of support going on, as Richard said. But it's a cumulative effort as well. As Richard said, we'll talk a bit more about the Insurance Day for Dementia, and that's insurance companies and parts of the market getting involved at all different levels as well. And it's that real cohesive teamwork, collaboration, community spirit that has helped this campaign be such a success, I think, and get towards that fundraising total, but also reach an incredible amount of people. We had a Dementia Friends session this week, and it was with colleagues across the PIB group who are currently in a 2-year partnership with the Alzheimer's Society. And this is one of our sort of flagship products, for want of a better term, for the Alzheimer's Society, to help people understand more about dementia, help break down some stigma, change the way that people think and act and talk, and support people living with dementia. 3.7 million people have done it now and been involved in these information sessions. And incredibly, since IUAD started across the insurance industry, we've now tipped over 18,000 insurance colleagues have gone to one of these sessions. We did this as a lunch and learn the other day, and it was fantastic. And people were tuning in from offices across the country that were involved, a part of the PIB group or online working from home, and 411 people joined that. As 411 people that maybe didn't know so much about dementia before, understand some of the symptoms, or as we said at the start, that it's an umbrella term for causes caused by diseases of the brain, and also a big part of that lunch and learn and those information sessions is the sort of signposting, and that's an important thing as well. If someone is going through a dementia journey themselves or with their loved one, through those kind of sessions, they also have a bit more information on where to go to get some help if they need it. And all of us
And
in
that's the
some
crux
shape
of
or
it, isn't
form.
it?
Yeah, exactly. And people can reach a crisis point, and if they don't get that help, it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, the industry is about people, and I think that the more people that are affected by this, and I've got so many friends and colleagues who are affected by dementia and the disease and their loved ones, there are more stories that can be told. And I think that the more stories that are told really, really brings to life how it's impacting our industry, and how it's impacting the people within that industry. And I think that, Richard, you know, I've recently joined the board of the Insurance United Against Dementia, and I had a very emotional, I guess, emotive reason for joining, and that was that my mum had dementia for over 10 years. She sadly passed away from dementia in May 2022. And the story really behind that was that my father passed away when she was 52, and I think that loneliness was a big cause of her dementia. We saw her health decline over those years, and then sadly my sister passed away. So it was there was lots of emotion, and she had vascular dementia. And the journey through that, I was working full time. I didn't know where to turn, and then there was COVID, and I couldn't have carers in. My mum was double incontinent. It was very, very tough, and I think that I needed support, and I didn't know where to turn. And then I found Insurance United Against Dementia, and I found the Alzheimer's Society, because sometimes you don't have time to look. I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but you don't have time to look. So you end up being consumed in this horrible place. So having that ability to talk to somebody, but also to be able to tell your story. And I think that the more people that kind of come forward and tell their story, the more the industry and the more the world will know about dementia and the impact of dementia. And that's the reason, the main reason I joined the walk across the Pyrenees and all of the things that I've been doing recently, is to ensure that my mum's corner is for, I want to be in my mum's corner. She'd be, I think, insanely proud of what we're doing in terms of Insurance United Against Dementia. But I think it's making sure that people in insurance tell their stories. So, Chris and Richard, where can people tell their stories? Who can they talk to? What can they do to make sure that their stories are heard, so that it has an impact on other people's lives and helps other people?
Thank you, firstly, for recently joining the IUAD board and for sharing your story. You and I have spoken about your mum on a few occasions, and I know obviously how hard it is to share one's story of dementia as well at times. So, thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. Talking more about our personal stories and the journey that we may have gone or seen with loved ones with dementia, it's helping to bring it out from behind closed doors. At the moment, we've been fortunate, and we've worked at the Alzheimer's Society with production company and with Channel 4, and we had a recent documentary come out, Anna Richardson, Love, Loss and Dementia. And it's a fantastic piece in terms of showcasing a few different stories of dementia. And we have this adage through our information sessions: if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. And this program really shows that. You've got people of very different ages, different backgrounds, different demographics, and showing different symptoms and signs of dementia. And what we really need people to know or learn through sharing stories is they're not alone, is that like this is happening to too many people, but there is potentially support out there. There's help that you can get through Alzheimer's Society or elsewhere in your local community that can help you navigate some of those challenges, or help you to um, enjoy more quality time together, help reduce some of the signs and symptoms, or help maybe get some respite in some instances, or help see like that person who's living with dementia shine again, whether it be going to a Singing for the Brain session or going to a reminiscence cafe or something like that. This support is so important. And in terms of people in insurance or elsewhere sharing their stories, through the Alzheimer's Society website, we've got a section now on the website for people to share their stories or submit stories if they would like to. But directly in terms of the IUAD and Insurance United Against Dementia campaign, myself and colleague Jade and others at the Society, we're available. So we have a IUAD mailbox, simply the acronym, at alzheimers.org.uk. And if people do want to share their stories, we'd love to kind of talk to them about how they can. LinkedIn is our best sort of tool for reaching out and talking about what we're doing across the industry. And we have before shared people's stories on there, or people post them on their account, and we can reshare, repost through there. And it's about just having more of that conversation. If we talk about it more as a society will see it more as a problem that we need to solve. Richard eloquently said it's the UK's biggest killer. Not enough people know that. Only 40% of people, I think, know that dementia is the UK's biggest killer. Nobody's yet survived it. So we need to get more investment in dementia, into research that can beat it. I was at an event yesterday, and our Associate Director of Research said, I think he said it at least 3 times, he said, research will beat dementia. And he and lots of other colleagues in the field are really positive that in our lifetime, for Alzheimer's disease at least, as the most common cause of dementia, we will see even more change. We will see more drugs come down the line that will stop or slow down the progression, might prevent in the future as well. So with greater input and funds from like government and from elsewhere, we can really move the needle further and faster. Like you see a journey that cancer has been on, as Richard said as well. No one would say cancer hasn't deserved that investment, and to see that journey in research, but so dementia deserves it as well, and the people living with it and affected by it deserve that.
And I think that the story goes right to the end, and I think this is something that from a very personal perspective, the end is sometimes quite scary, and it's something that as a society we don't talk a lot about, and that's the death and dying process through dementia as well. And I think that I found it a totally terrifying experience. However, if I'd have known what I know now, I'd have known all of the things were very natural. Everything that my mum went through was a very natural process. And I think, so the education isn't just about living with dementia, it's actually dying from dementia too. So I think that, whilst it's a very somber subject and people probably don't want to talk about it, it is part of the process. And, it's something that I personally want to bring to the forefront, is to look at that process and how to support people through the dying and the death process, because I think it's it's part and parcel of this disease. People are dying from it, and I think that we need some education, some experiences shared on that dying process, so it's not quite as scary for people when they have to watch their loved ones go through it. It's a very personal perspective, but it's oftentimes the thing that doesn't get talked about as much is what inevitably will happen with this disease. People die from dementia, and I think it's quite interesting that people kind of say, "Oh, died of pneumonia," but no, they died of dementia. I don't know whether that's a common thing, Chris, in terms of what people say they've died of when they've got dementia.
Yeah, that's right. No one has survived with dementia. As this is again something that my research colleague said the other day. You're right that they might have had pneumonia, might have been something that they had as they passed, but ultimately, they're the biggest organ in your body, the brain, is kind of also given up because it's been living with dementia and being damaged by brain disease and causing those dementia symptoms for however long that period may have been. And I know, Sharon, you said about the kind of end of life and your mother's passing before actually as well. And you're right, I'm sure if more people sharing that story, it's difficult to hear or difficult to read, but there will be so many people that have gone through that as well. And again, to point to, there's other support out there as well, but the Alzheimer's Society support line, our colleagues as experts, dementia experts, they're there to talk to people around this as well. They do often speak to people around end of life or people who might be worried about their loved ones coming to the latter stages of their dementia journey. And obviously that can be really difficult. So again, people knowing that there are places like that to turn and to talk to someone and to vocalize or get some advice on what to do and what that might look like. We can't advocate enough for sharing that number and signposting to the Alzheimer's Society for that advice and support as well.
And I think, Sharon, that topic as well, just to add to this, the whole concept of what happens at the end of the journey and making people aware of that, and as difficult as that might be, I think for me that links with another reason why all this is so important, because the knowledge that's out there is also, there's a complete lack of a sort of organised pathway for people once they do actually get diagnosed with dementia. And as Chris mentioned earlier, in many cases that doesn't happen. But when they do, it's not like if you get diagnosed with cancer or a heart disease issue, where there's normally a well-established pathway you go through, which includes physical care, it includes mental health care, it includes family support for those that are close to you. And that doesn't exist in the same way for dementia. And I think that's another reason why, this campaign trying to support the Alzheimer's Society and driving change in that area in social care as well as in healthcare is just so important.
No, absolutely. And, we've talked about what impact the industry support has had. I think that, we talked about the colleagues that have attended dementia awareness sessions since 2017. I think it's 18,000, you said. And there's been some really exciting breakthroughs, but we'll talk about those as well. But just in terms of the support, the 10 million that the insurance industry has raised so far, how has that directly affected or impacted the Alzheimer's Society and the research that's done, Chris?
Yeah, so one of the amazing things that IUAD fundraising has supported is the UK Dementia Research Institute, which is a collection of 7 higher education sites and to create this sort of hub of knowledge and focus on dementia research. And that actually started and kind of opened its doors as this kind of concept in 2018. And that wasn't possible without the support of funders and donors and voluntary contributions to Alzheimer's Society as one of the founding funders and others as founding funders of the UK DRI. And Insurance United Against Dementia was at the forefront of that, like when it was originated by Chris Wallace, as Richard said, and Paul and Benedict and Richard and many others that kind of came together. Research was a really big focus. When it thought it's not acceptable that we can't do more to kind of treat this at the moment, and without having that knowledge and commitment from an industry and from a group like this to say, yeah, we're going to raise a lot of money. Like Alzheimer's Society wouldn't have been able to say, okay, we can allocate £1 million plus per year to help fund the research talent that's going to be based out of this centre. So that was huge, and that centre has opened one of the elements of it is called the biomarker factory, and this is where it's looking at markers in the blood and how we can hopefully, and we're not too far off it, maybe have a simple blood test that will help diagnose Alzheimer's disease and the build up of proteins in the blood. That isn't possible without insurance companies have got behind IUAD and other supporters as well. But it's IUAD also galvanized the industry hugely during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's hard for us all to kind of think back to 2020 and all of the challenges that happened there. But people affected by dementia and living with dementia were, you sort of alluded to this earlier, Sharon, disproportionately affected by the pandemic. We all had issues around isolation and lack of social opportunities. But as you said, if you were living with dementia and carers couldn't come anymore to assist you, or your loved ones couldn't come and see you because you had to isolate, people were really challenged by that. And the insurance industry and IUAD mobilized to loneliness was a massive factor, and then that leads to a deterioration in people's symptoms much faster. But IUAD helped us to secure really crucial funds at the time through the Association of British Insurers and the COVID-19 Support Fund, and that led to a 2.4 million grant that went to frontline services. It was more of a pivot away from research for the campaign, but to really help with capacity of people on our support line to help people that really needed some advice and to get through the challenges, and also created this amazing service that is still going now. It originated through this grant, our companion call service, and that's a volunteer-based project where volunteers are matched with someone affected by or living with dementia, and it's a weekly or 2 times a week phone call to just talk to someone. And particularly during the pandemic, that was just crucial. If you had no one obviously visiting you and lots of other people not able to speak to you, that was just really helping people with that social isolation. And it's just 2 examples of like amazing kind of impact that the campaign has had. Over £2 million of the fundraising so far has gone to that research centre that I spoke to before as well. So it's really been a campaign that has done what we say has provided help right now and hope for the future for people living with dementia. And it's fantastic.
And Richard, I guess the focus of the funds that have been raised is really important, because I think it's essential that when you are giving to a charity such as Alzheimer Society, that you do know that those funds are being used in such a way that you can kind of earmark it and say, this is what we did as an industry, this is how we supported Alzheimer Society. So, I guess that's really important to be able to earmark where those funds are going.
Yeah, it is, and thank you, Sharon. And Chris has given a good explanation of where some or the majority of those funds have gone into, whether that's into various elements of the research, or, of course, especially when COVID hit, a lot of that money was diverted into care and social care in particular, and that was desperately needed at the time. So I like the fact there's a bit of flexibility there as well. I think that's really good. But to your point, when we talk to donors, whether those are corporate or individual donors, in a lot of cases, we give those donors the choice. If there's a material donation, if there's a very specific element they would like their money to go to, whether that's a particular element of the research program, or whether that's to do with social care, or whether that might be to do with government lobbying, or whatever it might be, they have the opportunity to determine that if they wish, or the funds can be directed as Alzheimer Society sees fit. And the majority of the money is in the latter camp, but we have had a number of significant donors who've made specific requests. And I think that's, to your point, it's important that people feel their money is going to be put to use where they would like it to be put to use. And that opportunity certainly exists in the campaign. Yeah,
definitely. I would like to touch on the new drugs that have been in recent press. Lecanemab, have I said that? Have I pronounced that properly?
I think so.
Yeah. So we heard, we've been hearing a lot in the press about lecanemab, which slows down the disease's progression. Is there anything that you can elaborate on, Chris, just to tell us a bit more about what that potentially means to us? Because I know that there are some obstacles that we need to get over.
Yeah, there are. You're right, Sharon. And I'm not a research person clearly, as I articulate myself there, but I will do my best to kind of add to this question. And Lecanemab coming through and recently being approved by MHRA as being safe for use for people with Alzheimer's disease really was a watershed moment for dementia. We haven't had what we call a disease-modifying treatment, so a drug that can slow the progression and the symptoms caused by dementia and by Alzheimer's disease has not happened before. But unfortunately, with it being approved by MHRA, it was not approved for use on the NHS by NICE, and that means that it isn't accessible to everyone currently living with Alzheimer's disease. And there were a few reasons for that, and partly around kind of cost and partly around diagnosis rates as well, and that this treatment is actually only as effective as it can be when people have had their diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease early. If they're presenting and they've been living with Alzheimer's disease for a decade or 5 years or something like that, the drug just simply can't have the levels of impact that it needs to be viable on the NHS. And it's an intravenous drug as well, so there's challenges in terms of what's available within the NHS to administer that, and the frequency of people kind of coming for treatment as well. So that's why that decision was kind of taken. But some people will still be able to access it. But the important thing is that this hasn't happened before. This hasn't been seen before. There's now another 164 clinical trials going on at the moment, and they are looking at 127 drugs that could be the next ones and take that further in terms of having an impact for Alzheimer's disease. And our research colleagues often say that cancer and other diseases had to go on this kind of journey as well. These are like phase 1 treatments. It's the beginning of the end for dementia. The researchers in the field will learn from Lecanemab, and they'll learn from these other trials, and we'll get to a point where the treatments are going to be able to be administered more easily and will be more cost effective, and we'll have also made more of a journey in diagnosis. So if we can speed up that process of diagnosis and a blood test that is easily administered, then people will be caught earlier with Alzheimer's disease and then be able to kind of go into that sort of treatment pathway as well. So it can sound a little bit disappointing as well of not being on the NHS, but it's a massive moment.
We might not be able to include this, but I do want to say it. So in terms of early diagnosis, and Richard, please just interject at any point here. Very frustrating that NICE has decided this course of action. Without being truly contentious, the pharmaceutical companies that are involved in creating and researching all of these products must be also as equally frustrated, because they work on a profit basis, and they are putting money into the research of these products. And the UK has decided that for the moment, anyway, until they have the infrastructure in place to provide this treatment, that the UK isn't going to be allowed to utilise it. The worry the worry potentially is that these pharmaceutical companies get a little bored of waiting for the UK to come on side with these treatments. And I know that they are being utilised in other areas of the world successfully, but because of our infrastructure, you mentioned the infusions, they're not. What is your take, Richard, on that? Do you have any?
I think you've made a good point there, and it is very disappointing. There's no question that NICE, which obviously governs whether the NHS is going to spend the money on these treatments, and as Chris said, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency had signed off on Lecanemab, but what they hadn't signed off was the cost of using it, and that's where NICE comes in. And it is incredibly frustrating, especially when you think about just what a dramatic set of diseases and the impact, as we've discussed for the last quite a few minutes, that it has on society. But I think it's a function also of the nature of the NHS, the free at the point of use. Somebody's got to fund this thing, and they have to make decisions about where they feel the best return on investment is. And that's a horrible way to put it, but that's exactly the decision they have to make. So it's not an easy discussion for them. So I think, yes, there are perhaps more we could do to really insist or to really push home just how important these drugs are going to become for not just the costs of running and funding the NHS, but also the broader social care impacts and the impact that it has on society, including all the individuals who are friends and family of those with these diseases. So it's just going to be a journey. I think it's a hackneyed phrase, but it is true. And I think we need to think through also perhaps ways to make these drugs available more cost effectively through the private sector, because it's not that you can't get access to these drugs, you can, but you have to pay for them. You can't get them through the NHS. And obviously that reduces dramatically the number of people who can access them. So I think there's a number of different areas that we need to work on, Sharon.
Okay. Guys, even if we use that bit or not, I just wanted to mention it. So we've got a big date in the diary, Insurance Day for Dementia coming up. And I just want to make sure that everybody who's listening to this is aware of it. So we raised, I think in 2023, Chris, a couple of 100,000 on Insurance Day for we called it Insurance Day for Giving last year, wasn't it? But now we've renamed it, is that right?
Yes, Insurance Day for Dementia has been renamed. It used to be called something slightly different, but we've been running it for 7 or 8 years, and it's one of the events, if you like, which we've tried to leverage to both increase the reach of raising awareness of people of what this disease or these series of diseases do, how impactful they are, where to go to for support, and to raise money at the same time. And it's been going since 2017, I think, so almost literally since we started the campaign. Started quite small, but when you add up the money that's been raised just from the activities on this one particular day every year since the beginning of the campaign, I think we're just over 700,000 now, which is fantastic. And 200,000 of that was from last year. So the importance and the reach of the day has been increasing every time that we've done it. I think this last year, and Chris will tell me if I get this wrong, but I think we had over 60 businesses across the insurance industry who were engaged in IDFD, as we call it, Insurance Day for Dementia. And we want to match that, of course, actually we want to surpass that this year. So it's really important that we try and increase the awareness across both corporations and those people who work for those corporations of getting involved. And maybe I'll add one more point, and then I'll let Chris finish off on perhaps how people could think about getting involved in Insurance Day for Dementia. The impact that's generated by people donating in one form or another through corporations or individually is amplified because we have a wonderful relationship with the Z Zurich Foundation, part of the Zurich Insurance Group, who have volunteered to match fund every pound that we raise up to a maximum of 100,000. So everything we raise up to 100,000, the impact is doubled because of that very generous commitment from Zurich. So I think that's, for me, 60 businesses is great, but really when you think about the size of the insurance industry, it should be a lot more than that. And, back to one of our earlier topics, Sharon, I'm really delighted that we're getting a much broader representation of the industry on the board, including people like yourselves who have access into different areas of the business. A lot of the original founders in the campaign, so maybe Benedict, certainly Paul, Jack, Chris Wallace, myself, we've largely been focused on the London market. Yes, we've been able to access the regions and some of our broader UK insurance, but we really want to increase that reach across the regions. And I think if we do that, we could certainly increase the impact of the day very significantly. But Chris, do you want to just talk a little bit about the ways in which people could get involved?
Yes, thank you, Richard. Really well set up there in terms of, you were right in the number of businesses that got involved in 2023's activities. And as you say, the support that we've had from Zurich and this year from Z Zurich Foundation is incredible. They're also allocating up to another £10,000, which is based on people across the industry taking part, being active, being involved in things leading up to and around Insurance Day for Dementia. So for every person that takes an action, whether it be coming to an information session, the webinar that we're going to deliver on the day, or fundraising, they will give another £5 per person, up to £10,000, which is just further incredible generosity. But in ways that people can get involved, we've been really fortunate that a number of businesses and insurance companies or brokers in the past have given donations from charitable funds that they have available, usually around the £5,000 mark or up to that kind of level. And there's been some really generous donors in that space. And that's obviously then doubled up to, if it's five, it becomes £10,000. My maths is clearly very strong, but it's also mobilising employees kind of within offices and across businesses as well, whether that be the traditional kind of like bake sales or other activities that you can do in offices, or getting involved in an active challenge. We're encouraging people to do like a 1,000 mile challenge this year as well, whether that be as a group or individually, which helps cover the distances around the centres of the research institute that I referred to earlier. And people again can set up fundraising pages and go out to their family, friends and colleagues for donations, which will be doubled up and matched pound for pound by Z Zurich Foundation. But it's that fundraising is a key part, and we've alluded to this or referenced this a few times, but it's about being involved and being active and learning as well. So during the day of Thursday, the 28th of November, we've got an online webinar, which will be hosted at Mark Lane at Zurich's offices, but then out online for as many people to join as possible. Our Associate Director of Research will be leading that and talking a bit about the hope for the future and some of the things that we've been referencing in terms of drug treatments. But then other board members from IUAD are joining that. Julie Godley from Legal and General and Dave Carey, formerly of Allianz, are joining that. And again, back to a narrative we've spoken today, they're going to be sharing a bit of their story and connection to dementia and why they're involved with the cause and the campaign as well, which again, those voices of peers and leading people in the industry will help and encourage other people too. And then finally, there are other ways to kind of activate and volunteer. We've got some tube station collections going on in London, and then at some cities across out in the regions as well, Birmingham, Leeds, and I think some more in the North and the Midlands as well. We've got a website or a web page on the Alzheimer's Society website where people can find out a bit more about that. And as Richard said, so getting more people in insurance companies across the country involved. And I think a lot of people actually quite enjoyed getting out and representing IUAD and Alzheimer's Society last year. Benedict Burke, in fact, was one of them with colleagues from Crawford at Aldgate train station. Just that way to really feel a part of something as well, and see people out supporting was great. So there's a few ways, and we've got a toolkit that can support people, and with communications that they can put out to their colleagues and on LinkedIn and things like that as well. So if anybody is interested to support, they can get in touch with us at our IUAD mailbox or through the LinkedIn channel as well.
Thank you. Excellent. And I think it's quite a key time for companies to be thinking about the charitable approaches for 2025. So I guess we encourage businesses to look to IUAD and Alzheimer's Society for supporting this is their chosen charity for 2025. And as you said, there's so many resources available to the folk in insurance. 1 in 3 of us are going to face dementia within our family and close friendship groups. So this couldn't be a more important time than raising funds. Now, I just want to, Richard, talk about phase 2, so 2.0. So we're coming to nearly 10 million, and what does IUAD 2.0 mean, and what do you think it's going to bring to the supporting Alzheimer's Society?
So yeah, I mean, Part 2 is definitely going to happen. The first stage of the campaign is due to finish at the end of March 2025, by which time we will, I'm not going to say we hope, we will be through our £10 million goal for phase 1. And let's be honest, the most important thing right now is to finish that off, to make sure we get IUAD 1.0 finished and make sure we reach the targets that we've set ourselves and committed to. I think the very simple answer, Sharon, and maybe actually IUAD 2.0 would be a good subject for another podcast to talk in more detail about the reasons why and what we want to try and achieve through 2.0. But the short version is that this problem isn't going to go away. It's actually becoming more of an issue for society. As I said earlier on, and we've heard, in fact, we've all mentioned, it is the biggest killer. It became so a few years ago. It's going to keep being the biggest killer, I think, both in the UK and in a lot of other parts of the world as well. So there's no way that we could stop trying to support the Alzheimer's Society to help solve the challenges that are associated with dementia right across society. And I think the insurance industry has shown a great willingness to do so in the first part of the campaign, but we've only actually really accessed a relatively small part of the industry to do that. So I think there's a lot more to go. And with the real dramatic advances we're seeing in disease-modifying treatments and inability to diagnose, including through the blood test biomarkers that Chris mentioned earlier, it's very obvious, I think, to me, that the industry should continue to support that journey and help accelerate it.
Absolutely. No, that's really good. So I think, Richard and Chris, thank you so much for providing us with these fantastic insights into how we can support IUAD and Alzheimer's Society in finding that cure for dementia. I just want to add, if you haven't already watched Love, Loss and Dementia with Anna Richardson, find it on catch up. There wasn't a dry eye in our household. It was absolutely incredible. I think on that note, thank you for your time today, and thank you for listening to People in Insurance, Changing the Conversation.
Thank you for tuning in to another enlightening episode of People in Insurance. If you enjoyed today's insights and want to stay connected with the latest industry trends, be sure to subscribe, rate and leave a review. Feel free to reach out to us on social media or through our website to share your thoughts and suggestions, or even to nominate someone whose contribution deserves to be heard. Until next time, signing off from People in Insurance.